This is the story of how a forgotten USB drive on a bus became a $12 billion company, and why you probably don't use it anymore. Drew Houston rode a bus from Boston to New York in 2007 and realized somewhere along the way that he'd forgotten his flash drive again. That frustration led him to spend the entire 4-hour trip writing code for a solution, and that solution became Dropbox, the app that once felt like magic because it gave you a folder that just synced everywhere without any effort. 700 million registered users joined at its peak, and Dropbox pioneered an entire category of software that we now take for granted. Steve Jobs personally tried to buy it. Yet today, if someone asked what cloud storage you actually use, most people would name Google Drive, or iCloud, or OneDrive. What happened to the company that invented the magic folder? The answer involves a meeting with Steve Jobs, a 9-figure offer that got turned down, and the brutal reality of competing against trillion-dollar tech giants who can give away for free what you're trying to sell. The founding story of Dropbox is genuinely unusual, so it's worth going back to the beginning. Drew Houston kept forgetting his USB drive when he was studying at MIT, and after that frustrating bus ride in 2007, he applied to Y Combinator with his idea for cloud storage that would sync automatically. One problem stood in his way. He was a solo founder, and Y Combinator's Paul Graham didn't like that arrangement. Graham gave Houston a conditional acceptance along with an ultimatum to find a co-founder within 2 weeks or lose his spot entirely. Houston responded by recording a 4-minute demo video and posting it to Hacker News, where it went viral and hit Dig's front page. Arash Ferdowsi, another MIT student, saw that video and reached out, which led to a coffee meeting at the student center. Houston described what followed this way. At the end, he said, "Okay, yeah, I'll drop out next week." I like to describe it as if we got married on the second date. 6 months before graduation, Ferdowsi walked away from MIT, which tells you exactly how much he believed in the idea. September 2008 brought the public launch at TechCrunch 50, and the growth that followed turned out to be explosive. Their referral program gave 500 megabytes of free storage for every friend you invited, which drove 3,900% growth in just 15 months and took them from 100,000 users to 4 million between 2008 and 2010. The pitch stayed beautifully simple. If you can save a file, you can use Dropbox. October 2011 brought 50 million users. November 2012 crossed 100 million, and January 2014 saw BlackRock lead a $350 million round that valued Dropbox at $10 billion. A forgotten flash drive had turned into one of the most valuable startups in Silicon Valley in just 7 years, and that's when Steve Jobs called. December 2009 brought a summons to Apple's headquarters in Cupertino because Steve Jobs wanted to meet Drew Houston and Arash Ferdowsi personally. They drove to the meeting in a rented Zipcar Prius, and Houston later admitted, "I mean, Steve friggin' Jobs. How do you even prepare for that?" When Houston arrived and pulled out his laptop to give a demo, Jobs waved him away with 4 words. "I know what you do." Jobs offered to acquire the company for a sum reportedly in the 9 figures, which would put it somewhere north of $800 million. Houston declined because he wanted to build a big company rather than sell one. What Jobs told him next turned out to be prophetic. Dropbox was a feature, not a product, Jobs explained, and Apple planned to go after their market directly. Houston characterized the message as essentially, "All right, well, I guess we're going to have to go kill you." October 2011 brought the launch of iCloud, and Jobs himself described it as a hard disk in the sky. The war had begun. The story turns here because what happened next wasn't just one competitor showing up. $3 trillion companies all decided to offer the same thing Dropbox was selling. April 2012 brought Google Drive with 5 gigabytes of free storage, which later increased to 15 gigabytes. February 2014 saw Microsoft rebrand SkyDrive to OneDrive and begin bundling it with Windows and Office 365. Apple kept improving iCloud and made it the default for every iPhone, iPad, and Mac user. These numbers put the situation in perspective. Dropbox's free tier offers 2 gigabytes of storage, while Google Drive offers 15 gigabytes, which is 7.5 times more storage for free. Storage was only part of the story, and here's where bundling turned out to be the real killer. Microsoft 365 subscribers get 1 terabyte of OneDrive storage included, along with the entire Office suite, and one user put it this way: "I used to use Dropbox, but OneDrive gives you Office for free." Apple users find that iCloud syncs their photos, documents, and device backups automatically across all their devices because it's built into the operating system. Gmail users and over 1 billion people fall into that category. Find Google Drive right there and integrated with Docs, Sheets, and everything else in Google's ecosystem. Dropbox had become a standalone product competing against features bundled into platforms that people were already using. Market share numbers now tell the story clearly. Google Drive commands somewhere between 47 and 62% of the cloud storage market with over 1 billion users, while Dropbox sits at between 20 and 22%. The company that invented consumer cloud storage now sits solidly in second place. Competition intensified, and that's when Dropbox started making decisions that alienated its user base. March 2019 brought a change that sparked immediate backlash. Free accounts were suddenly limited to just 3 devices, while every competitor still allowed unlimited devices on their free plans. Anyone with a desktop, laptop, work computer, phone, and tablet suddenly had to choose which devices could access their files or pay up. Price increases came next. Dropbox Plus rose from $9.99 to $11.99 per month in 2019, a 20% jump, while Google One's comparable plan stayed at $9.99. Security issues damaged user trust even further. June 2011 brought a code update that went wrong, and password authentication was completely disabled for approximately 4 hours, which meant any Dropbox account could be accessed with any password or no password at all. CTO Arash Ferdowsi acknowledged, "This should never have happened." And this is where it gets worse. Mid-2012 saw attackers access a Dropbox employee's account using credentials stolen from LinkedIn, and that employee had stored a document containing user data. The breach affected 68 million accounts, nearly 60% of Dropbox's users at the time. What made this really damaging was that Dropbox didn't fully disclose this breach until August 2016, 4 years after it happened. Privacy concerns mounted as well. April 2014 brought former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice onto the board, and critics pointed to her defense of warrantless NSA wiretapping. The hashtag #DropDropbox started trending. 6 months later, Edward Snowden publicly called Dropbox hostile to privacy and urged people to switch. Get rid of Dropbox, it doesn't support encryption, it doesn't protect your private files. For a company whose entire value proposition was trust us with your files, that criticism landed hard. What did all of this mean for Dropbox's business? The numbers paint a clear picture. March 2018 brought the IPO at $21 per share, valuing the company at $8.2 billion. Opening day saw the stock hit $29, and by June 2018 it reached an all-time high of around $43. That turned out to be the peak. Dropbox stock now trades around $27, roughly 30% below its IPO price, and the company's market cap sits at approximately $7 billion. For context, that's about 0.2% of Alphabet's or Microsoft's valuation. 700 million registered users joined by 2020, but since then, nothing has changed. The number has been stuck there for years. Paying user growth went from 35% year over year in 2016 down to just 0.5% by 2024, and the second quarter of 2025 actually showed a revenue decline of 1.4% compared to the year before. For the first time in its history, Dropbox is shrinking. Layoffs came next. January 2021 saw 315 employees cut. April 2023 brought another 500, which was 16% of the company. And October 2024 eliminated 528 more positions representing 20% of remaining staff. Between 2022 and 2024, Dropbox's workforce shrank from 3,118 employees to 2,204, a 29% reduction over just 2 years. Drew Houston was blunt when announcing the 2023 layoffs. The AI era of computing has finally arrived. I've made the difficult decision to reduce our global workforce by approximately 16%. Dropbox is now betting everything on artificial intelligence, and the centerpiece is Dropbox Dash, an AI-powered universal search tool that doesn't just search your Dropbox files, but can also search Google Drive, OneDrive, Slack, Notion, and dozens of other apps where your files might be scattered. Drew Houston explained the vision in October 2024. I first launched Dropbox because we all needed a better way to find and access our content, no matter what device or platform it lived on. Today, we're solving the 2024 version of that problem. Our content is scattered everywhere. The strategy is actually clever because instead of competing directly against Google Drive and OneDrive, they're trying to become the layer that sits on top of all of them. The challenge is that Google, Microsoft, and Apple are all building AI features too, and they have essentially unlimited resources to do it. Dropbox is once again trying to be a product in a world of platforms, and platforms have a way of absorbing successful products. Why did you stop using Dropbox? Probably for the same reasons millions of others did. Google gave more free storage, Apple made iCloud work without any effort on your devices, Microsoft threw in a terabyte with Office subscriptions, and Dropbox's advantages, which felt revolutionary in 2008, became standard by 2015. This is a story about what happens when you build a brilliant product that turns out to be exactly what Steve Jobs called it: a feature, not a platform. When your competitors can replicate your core functionality and give it away for free as part of a larger ecosystem, you're in trouble. Drew Houston built something genuinely new and turned a forgotten flash drive into a company worth billions of dollars. He rejected Steve Jobs and proved Dropbox could survive independently. That accomplishment stands on its own. Surviving and thriving are two different things, though. Dropbox is profitable but not growing, has 700 million registered users but most don't pay, and pioneered cloud storage only to watch Google Drive grow past 1 billion users. The magic folder that once felt like the future now feels like a folder, and in a world where folders come free and bundled with everything else, that's a hard thing to charge money for. Houston was right to turn down Steve Jobs in 2009. Jobs was also right about something, though. Dropbox was always going to be a feature in the long run, and features eventually get absorbed by platforms. That's why you stopped using Dropbox, and that's why 700 million other people still have accounts they probably haven't opened in years.